there are many myths about Jesus. In these programs, we're talking to some experts who can help us get at the facts behind the myths. One myth is that the stories about Jesus were made up to meet the needs of the Christian communities where they were told.
There's no question that when one compares the four Gospels, they are not alike. And when one compares through a synopsis with parallel columns, even parallel accounts of the same episode, they're not word for word identical. If they were, what would be the point of having more than one Gospel? So it is true that the Gospel writers selected and put into their own words and paraphrased and explained and abbreviated and omitted, as all historians in the ancient Mediterranean world did, the sources, written and oral, from which they derived their information about Jesus. To that extent, yes, there is a theological spin that can be put on passages because all historians put an ideological spin on passages. The idea that history was worth recording for history's sake really never caught on in the world until the 19th century, not even 200 years ago. In the ancient world, the assumption was if you narrated something, it was because there was a lesson to be learned from it. And that is a spin. But does that mean that stories were invented out of whole cloth and attributed to Jesus? There's no evidence for that. Does that mean that whatever spin is put on is something that distorts rather than complements other accounts? Read the parallels for yourself and decide, but it certainly does not seem to be that way.
Well, there are two things that are going on here. First of all, there's no proof that that is being done. I mean, we have an expression here in the States, where's the beef? And so show me that that is actually what's going on. There's another assumption that's very, very important in this, and that is that somehow the idea of being able to address contemporary needs means you are not interested in the original historical level. And what oftentimes is done is you're forced to make a choice, at least the way a skeptical person will present it. I either have to address contemporary needs or I address the history. But the other combination is that the history helped to shape the contemporary needs in the contemporary scene so that I can address contemporary needs and present the history at the same time. I don't think the level of the differences that we have in the Gospels, and we do have differences, and we do have the Gospel writers who are making different points with the same event on occasion, that kind of thing. I don't think they do so in such a way that they deny the historical base of what it is that they're giving. In fact, everything that they say tells us that they're not doing that. I mean, Luke says to Theophilus, I want to give you assurance about the things that you've been taught. That seems to suggest some type of historical base to what's going on. And if you do compare the Gospels to one another, you will see that the fundamental story of how central Jesus is to the story, who he is, how he's presented, is very much the same.
The myth is that the stories about Jesus were made up to meet the needs of the Christian communities where they were told. The fact is that the writers applied the stories about Jesus to their situations, but this doesn't mean that they made up the stories or altered the facts to fit their agendas. Next time, we'll ask whether the Bible's accounts of Jesus contradict each other